You know what I'm tired of hearing about? GME. GameStop. Specifically, the people still schizo posting about it in the year of our Lord 2024. Count yourself lucky if you're sitting there scratching your head, nary a peep about the stock since 2021, because make no mistake, they're still posting, still buying, still diamond handing, convinced the mother of all short squeezes is any day now. Please, Ryan, we beg you. Honestly, reading SuperStonk, the subreddit there, is a horror show. The amount of people senselessly stuck squandering their families' fortunes, retirements, college funds, it's sickening to me. But at this point, they've just been huffing all this copium for all these years, committing so hard for so long, that to unwind their portfolio positions in GameStop at this point would be to unwind a significant part of who they become as people. And that's exactly what I'm asking them to do today. So let me spin you a yarn on where the great apes have migrated since the meme stock mania of 2021, what the basis for their beliefs are, how their bad faith prophets profiting off of their futures, how they've essentially morphed into a cult akin to QAnon, only for finance, and most importantly of all, how it is never too late to sell. This is financial advice.
There once was a stock that put to sea. The name of the stock was GME. The price blew up and the shorts dipped down. Hold my bully boys, hold.
GameStop was called EB Games up here in Canada, fun fact. And by the late 2010s, they were dying a long, protracted death at the hands of digital media. I mean, Christ, it's still happening to this day. I mean, like a week or two ago, there was the PS5 Pro announced, and there was no option for a disk drive physically for $800 USD. But seriously, though, there's just no option for physical media for that console, and that's going to be the future of consoles. That's how they're doing it, because they get to cut out the middleman and the middleman rent-seeking that they do at GameStop. So their suppliers are actively trying to kill them. And meanwhile, their customers, what did we think of GameStop? Well, let me tell you, we all hated their guts because they were best known for this insulting-ass lowball trade-in scheme that they had. I mean, Christ, even at the tail end of my gaming days, I remember I was, 15 and a bit, just under the age I could drive myself. So I go in and get the new COD, because I'm like, oh man, remember all those days in MW2 or Modern Warfare, like...
Reported.
All those days. I was just trying to recapture that glory, and I very quickly remembered, no, those days are gone, and trying to buy the new of the same franchise, it's not going to recapture them. The moment's just a memory now. And so I knew that. But then Mom could only drive me back to return it on Monday, and so I was 2 days and a few hours too late to return it. And I'm like, I know it's like 2 days, can't you stretch it? No, sorry, 2 hours too late, bud. Oh, but we have a trade-in program. Oh, really? Okay, yeah. How much for this $70 game I bought 2 days and 2 hours ago for $70? Dude starts looking like the guy from Pawn Stars. Oh, best I could do is $5. $5? Yeah, $5. In-store credit, $5. Are you fucking kidding me? I look over to the shelf. Sure enough, there's the latest COD, the one in my hand, the $70 one from 2 days and 2 hours ago. Buddy, you're listing that used for $50. Some other sucker got taken on this $5 swindle, and now you got him listed up there for $50. You 10x'd on it. You're not 10x'ing on me. Go fuck yourself. Buddy, I'm gonna sell this on Kijiji. I don't care if I sell it for $4, just as long as I know that you're not the one getting such a profit off me. Fuck, I'm still mad about that. But okay, back to the story. As you know, it was a video game distributing company, and their suppliers were trying to kill them. Their customers hated their guts. They're just dying. And so they had, from what I can tell, a bad board and management, but I don't think that mattered one bit because they were just structurally screwed. They were going the same way as all the other brick and mortar type stores that Amazon ate, for example. So anyway, in terms of the story itself, I'm going to try to speed run the GME short squeeze initial story of the initial stock mania in 2021. So it starts with three main characters. The latter two are the important ones that I'll be recurring. So the first one, you had Michael Mortgage-Backed Burry from the 2008 mortgage-backed security crash. Famous for that, calling it. Then you had Roaring Kitty, aka Deep Fucking Value, greatest username, aka DFV, aka Keith Gill. This is the most famous of the three. But the third one, I think, is most important, because he's the villain of today's story. And this is none other than Montreal, Canada-born Ryan Cohen. So amongst these three, like I said, Roaring Kitty, as I'll be referring to the dude with 4 names, and Ryan Cohen, those are the 2 most important. Now, Roaring Kitty, you see, he got all that clout and fame for this, though, because he was the retail face of this. He was the one on Reddit who popularized it. He was posting for years saying this is going to pop, there's going to be a short squeeze potential, but he kind of stole these ideas in June 2019 when he started posting about it. You see, someone beat him to the punch by almost a year, and that was none other than Patrick Bateman from The Big Short, if you've ever seen it. Now, that Michael Mortgage-backed Barry guy, that's who it was in real life. He saw that there was potential for a short squeeze, and this dude's all about shorts and screwing shorts and just looking in on those type of cases. And so when Roaring Kitty was watching his fund, Scion Capital, and their investment positions, he's like, hey, wait, what's this about GameStop they're getting into? And so he started researching it, and he thought, shit, there's an opportunity here. And so when he initially entered, this main character on the retail side, Keith, or Roaring Kitty, he was about $5 to $8 a share is where it bounced around in, mid 2019. But also, so when I discuss all the prices in this video, I'm going to try to keep it pre-stock split, before the stock split, and I'm going to try to translate it post-stock split so that you can still infer what the price would be equivalent. It's annoying. I know it happened in June or July of 2022, but just this is what happens in stock split. Okay, it was 4-1. Fuck me. Good luck. So, like I said, Roaring Kitty got in around the $5 to $8 per share position, but it just kept going down because, like I said, GameStop is a shit company and it was going to go under. But he didn't care. He white-knuckled it, or diamond-handed it, as the apes say. Apes being the investors of GameStop and other meme stocks. Apes strong together, as they say. So he just white-knuckled or diamond-handed it down through the lows of $3 pre-pandemic, then the pandemic lows in April of 2020 down to $2.70 a share. This guy was down 70%, but he white-knuckled or diamond-handed it through, and he was down again to $2.70 per share in July of 2020. This is when he released, though, his seminal work, The 3 Overs, his investment thesis for why GameStop was undervalued and he was a bull. We'll return to this, but just Jesus Christ. Anyway, so luckily for him, the very next month, Ryan Cohen, our villain, enters the fray. You see, Ryan was known previously for Chewy, an online pet food retailer. Yeah. And he enters the fray with a 9% stake. And the 3 of them, Michael Mortgage-backed Barry / Patrick Bateman, combined with Roaring Kitty, who was also penning letters directly as a retail investor. And then finally, Ryan Cohen, all 3 of them, and I think one other party, were penning a shit ton of letters to management, the board, saying, you suck, die. And honestly, again, they did suck, but just what the hell could they have done? If they were rock stars, what would have changed? And so by the, late December, I want to say, Ryan Cohen said, hey, I'm up in my stake and I'm in talks to join the board. This is late December 2020. Shit's happening, shit's moving. And so by the new year, the subreddit, the biggest investment subreddit on Reddit, WallStreetBets, self-described very accurately as if 4chan found a Bloomberg terminal. They got in on the action. They started seeing the theses, they started believing, they became apes, and they started placing increasingly audacious bets, portfolio positions on GameStop and the short squeeze to follow. And sure enough, by mid-January 2021... Fuck me.
She had not been 2 weeks from shore when Ryan Cohen joined the board. The captain called all hands and swore he'll take his shares and hold.
I'm going to have to learn you on short selling and short squeezes. All right, bear with me. All right, if you already get it, yeah, you can skip ahead. But I'm going to make it entertaining anyway, so I encourage you to stick with me. Also, my watch time. But also, because I guarantee the majority of you who think, oh, I already understand this, you don't. And it's going to fuck your understanding for the rest of this video. So just humor me, okay? Just confirm your knowledge, because nothing I'm saying is a lie here. So you see GameStop, right? They're circling the drain because they're a dog shit business. Everyone and their dog knew that. But they're circling a lot quicker than gravity would dictate. Even factoring in the Coriolis effect. It's like this water is going down quicker than it should. Why? Now, there's a reason why. It's because people were shorting it. Shorting a stock causes the price to go down more than if the market otherwise would let it be and run its course. Now, why were people shorting it? I'll get to that, but how specifically does shorting work? That's a good question. So shorting works where, let's say, a hedge fund, they're all looking at GameStop and they're like, structurally, they're fucked. Everyone hates them. They suck. They're going to go out of business. This is free money. I'm going to short it. So they go to someone like a stockbroker like Fidelity or Robinhood, or they go to some market makers or maybe some banks, anyone who's got a lot of GameStop stock. And they're like, hey, could I borrow 10 shares or whatever? And they're like, no, you can borrow them to short. There'll be a bunch of requirements, margin calls, and also you got to give me back the 10 shares by the end of this, and other stuff like interest rate on the borrowed shares. But as long as they're good, then hedgies are like, yeah, let's go. And then they take them and just sell them on the open market immediately. And so that money they take, that is the short. Now they got to do a bunch of other stuff with it, but that's the basic idea. They're going to take that money and they're just hoping and praying that by the time they must return them or decide to return them, they're going to end up buying it back. Instead of $10 a share, maybe it's $5. And now when you add up all the carrying costs of the short, on the whole, they'll net $3 per share. So damn, depending on the time horizon and their IRR hurdle rates, that could be a good return. It's just free money, basically, especially if it's a company like GameStop, or so they thought. But anyway, if I had to do a layman analogy, I'd look at it like Blockbuster. I hope I'm not too boomer for all these sub-zoomers out here. You see, Blockbuster was a video rental store where you rent DVDs. Imagine going to Blockbuster and you're like, hey, I want the latest movie in 2006, whatever that may be. And they're like, great, yeah, like $10 rental fee. If you're late, it's like $10 per week. And you're like, great. And so you take it, you immediately sell it to your next door neighbor for whatever the retail cost for that DVD new is, and then you just hope and pray to God that you go to Value Village one day and you find it in the bargain bin for like $1 or whatever it may be, and that overall, when you do return it, when you add up all the late fees and the initial rental cost, you'll net out like $10, $20 profit, whatever it may be. That's the idea. In a word, insane. Don't short sell. I'll expound upon that more, but just don't short sell. It's a bad idea. Now, in terms of what short selling could also be, there's a different type. It's not short selling specifically, but it has a similar effect. It's called puts. Look, here's a chart for puts. I won't explain this too much. It's not important. All that matters is that puts, in theory, are less risky because they have less risk. Your investment could go to zero, but it's not an infinite loss potential. What I will say contrary to that is that I see puts go to zero a hell of a lot more than shorts, because put positions, if you're in the money, it's worth something. If it expires out of the money, whatever you paid for those put options, they're done, because a put is not an obligation, it's a right, if you so choose, to sell a stock to whoever issued you that put contract by a predefined date at most. And it's for a predefined price. Now, if it's below or above that predefined price, that determines if you make the profit. If it's on the wrong side of it, your whole dollar value you paid for that contract, it is just poof, gone. So again, shorts in theory are theoretically much riskier, but in reality, I view puts as riskier because it's much more likely to give you nothing in the end. In short, don't short sell, okay? As a rule of thumb, it's a bad investment strategy. Even if you got those obvious wins, you're gonna often find you're picking up pennies in front of a steamroller. Ask Bill Ackman how Herbalife went, huh? He was damn well right. It was a pyramid scheme. They should be in illegal business. They should go out of business. And yet Carl Icahn walked in and said, you're right, but unfortunately, I got more money. And so boom, he lost billions of dollars. Insane. That actually blackpilled me on public equity markets, but that's another video. I'll get into that. In terms of going back to short selling, again, even if you have those obvious opportunities, yeah, you go to the broker and you're like, I want to short GameStop. You're like, yeah, you and everyone's uncle, buddy. So because those shares are in high demand, you're going to have to pay a higher interest rate to loan them out for the process. Also, because everyone's trying to do it, the broker's going to take on a lot of risk in that one portfolio position because everyone's making the same bet. So now they're going to have to start charging more in terms of, margin requirements. And so how does short selling work? You see, when you go to the broker and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll short sell for you. Here's what happens. They take those stocks that they already have, they sell them for you. You don't get the money though. No, they keep the money. And then they say, open your wallet, give me 50% of what the value of this short sale was. You see, it ties up a shit ton of your money. And so already that makes it hard to leverage. On top of that though, now they're gonna say, all right, If the price goes up, yeah, sure, you can start withdrawing some. Or I mean, if the price goes down, you can. But if the price goes up, you see, now you got to keep pumping money in to maintain your margin, or then you get margin called, they liquidate your position at a massive loss, and then tough shit. On top of that, though, there's a lot more carrying fees too. You see, for example, when you have a dividend issued, you see that company that you're borrowing the shares from, they're like, yeah, I'm owed the dividend because I still legally own the shares, you're just renting them. And so because of that, you got to front the cash because you don't own the shares, so you just got to pay them whatever the dividend would have paid on their stock. Another massive cost. It adds up, especially when you're moving hundreds of millions of dollars on these bets. On top of all that, though, you see, for most big institutions, they got a reputation, they got liquidity, they got a lot of backing, they have credit facilities, they have all these things that can make them a more trustworthy party to do business with. You don't, okay? You're some average Joe. You pass that course probably by Googling the answers to allow you to do margin trading, all right? And so you do the short sell, but because you have none of the reputation or any sort of, reliability on the broker's viewpoint, that means they're going to charge you out the ass. So you see that 50% margin, that might be for some brokerage firm doing it to like a hedge fund. Maybe it's a little bit more lenient, but for you, who knows? So all these carrying costs, as it's called, of the investment, it just adds up more and more and more. Like check out this graph, for example. This graph, I think, highlights it perfectly. This is exactly what you're looking at for, two different scenarios of a price movement in terms of a short sale. It's just not a sexy investment. You're not going to shoot the lights out with it. I'd avoid it. Because again, there is infinite risk. Don't forget that too. You could technically lose more than it all. You could owe them a lot of money. Imagine being in debt and losing all of your investment portfolio just because you made one bad bet on a stock going down. That's horrific. Basically, don't short sell, okay? I hope I hammered that point home enough today because you're fighting against gravity. Gravity's going to win. In the long run, shares go up, stocks go up. You're going to lose in the long run, okay? But anyway, so GME, all these firms hopping on the short train. What's step one of shorting? Selling the shares. Now there's a lot of shares available for sale. But again, remember, GME, dog shit company no one wants to buy. So what happens now? Economics takes over. Supply and demand. Too much supply, too little demand. You must have a new equilibrium price to make there be induced demand to buy out the supply. What happens now? Price falls. This is the positive feedback loop. This is the doom loop, the death spiral. Because now, you got short people short selling. Now there's more shares available for sale. Now there's more price declines because there's an oversupply of shares. And now you have more people shorting because again, they're hopping on the bandwagon, which leads to further shares for sale, which leads to further price declines, which leads to more short selling, which leads to further shares for sale, which leads to further price declines, which you get the point, okay? But this is also the origin of a potential short squeeze. Because you see all these big whales, they see what's going on. And near the end of the doom loop, now the price is super low and there's very little volume because all the shares are either owned by people who are just not interested in shorting or they're people shorting. No one wants to catch the falling knife. So there's no volume on the day-to-day for shares trading hands. And now these short squeezers, they're trying to catch the shorts with their pants down because what's happening now is they're going to come in, they're going to buy a bunch of shares. Doesn't take a lot of money actually because again, there's very little liquidity in this stock. And the price is really low, so they can very quickly get some price action going by buying a bunch of the float. What happens next? Now prices go up, and now a bunch of people start getting margin calls. Either they put up, or they shut up and sell. That's what happens. Or internal risk management sees what's going on. They're like, shit, there is some big players coming down. They are going to kill us. And they're like, yeah, but we're going to have to sell at a 50% loss. Doesn't matter. Exit this position before you jeopardize the firm's balance sheet, okay? Make it up on the P&L next year. Doesn't matter. Bad trade. So regardless of whether it's the broker or the internal risk management, someone's going to force a lot of these shorts to start closing their positions. This is the start of a new positive feedback loop, the short squeeze. Because you see what happens now is there's a few people that are compelled to go out and buy shares to close their position. Because closing a short means you got to return the shares. You got to give back that DVD to Blockbuster. So now there's a bunch of people buying shares. They must. And so now there's a lot of demand, but you see the short squeezers, they know this. They're not selling. They're buying and holding and not making their shares available for lending. What this means is that they know they got you. you're not going to get out easy. So now you got to keep on waiting for enough volume to pick up, which means that there's got to be more price. Because again, supply and demand works both ways. There's a ton of demand, no supply. The equilibrium price must raise now to make there be enough supply. You got to give a price that's worth it for these short squeezers to say, okay, that's enough profit for me. And they're greedy motherfuckers. So what happens now? A new positive feedback loop. Because you see what happens next is there's more people being forced to close their positions, which means that there's more people being forced to buy their shares. But there's no shares available, so the price must raise for there to be people willing to part with their shares, which then means more people get margin called or forced to exit their position, which means that there's more people needing to buy shares. But now there's not enough price, so the price must raise to compel more people to list their shares for sale, which means that there's got to be more demand because more people are forced to exit, which means that there's going to be more buying, which means that there's going to be
Soon may the turning man come to send a rocket into the sun. One day when the trading is done, we'll take our gains and go. Soon.
January 13th, 2021, GameStop started the day at $20 USD a share. Mind you, this is already almost 10x what it was during its COVID lows less than a year ago, but by the end of the day, it doubled to 40. That's pretty crazy. Only a week later, though, it did it again. Went from 40 at the start of the day on January 22nd to 80 by the end. This stock's on a tear, but it didn't stop there. You see, on 26th, it went from 80 to 150, basically another double. We're at 8x now. Then the next day, it went up to 380 USD a share. By January 28th, the following day after that, 500 USD a share. 500 US dollars per share. That is 25x a 2-week ago share price. You know what I do for a 25 bagger? I shoot my own mother. I mean, not actually, Mom, if you're watching. But the point is that is an insane return. And in fact, this was the mother of all short squeezes in terms of history. It was bigger than the previous record holder, which was VW, or, the car company from 2008. That was the previous biggest, and this beat it. And yet, it started to fall. Boys, what happened? I thought we were going to bankrupt Wall Street. I thought we had the hedgies cornered. You were telling me I was getting north of 100K a share. What happened there? Well, SuperStonk and the apes had some theories. You see, publicly, there was 150% of the float being shorted. You see, there was at its peak 70 million shares sold short. Now, there was about 70 million shares total, but, Ryan Cohen's 13% and a few other big heavy hitters and insiders. All of those guys, you see, they can't sell like you or I can, so they're not really liquid. The float is the actual true liquid, realistic shares available to be traded on a day. Now, of that amount, 150%, or so the SEC would have you believe. You see, on SuperStonk, they had some theories. They thought it was 226 at a minimum. They thought it was north of 1,000.
What if, just what if, the rumors are true and that there are a total of 1.5 billion shares shorted on GameStop?
The numbers were all over the board. In fact, people were convinced with some math that the intrinsic value of their shares was going to be 620-some grand, if I remember correctly. I don't know, I saw a Schizo post back in the day on it. But the point is that these were well short of where they should be, and the amount of shorts they think were much higher than publicly known. How could that be, though? We have pretty good data, and it's also been years. We should know now. But enter the naked short. The naked short is their theory for how we avoided the mother of all stock squeezes, at least for now. Because a naked short is when you break the very first step of a short. You sell a share you don't own. The share does not exist. Someone bought a fake share, is the idea. And you see, this used to be legal until 2004 in the US, in which case it was banned. Now, it's banned in the way that speeding is banned. You see, speeding, it's illegal. It's illegal. Yeah, you still do it. We all do it. But when it comes to naked short selling, it's the same way. Like, it's illegal, but you can still, like, the mechanisms to do it exist. It's just, you're not allowed to do it. And so the theory is they did it. But, that shouldn't do everything, right? Like, surely if they just avoided it and they have a bunch of off-balance sheet shorts, surely that means that the mother of all short squeezes is any goddamn day now, right? right?
For 40 days or even more, the stock went up then down once more. All gains were lost, it was looking poor, but still those traders did hold.
All right, we're finally done the exposition. I apologize for it taking so long, but look, you have to catch everyone up on the story itself, but more importantly on the actual fundamentals of what was going on. Because no one understands finance, which is kind of shocking, because it literally, you could teach a monkey finance in 3 weeks. Like my investment banking job, you could cram a month and you could basically get the gist enough to be a junior analyst starting. You know, my degree even, it was fun. I'll leave it at that. But my point being is that people don't get it. You got to get them up to speed, because otherwise we're going to be speaking different languages. But now that we're here, we get to talk about the fun parts. And the fun parts, let's start with the dumb money and bag holders and all this, because there's a lot of them. Chief of all, the biggest loser in all of this is Gabrielle Plotkin from Melvin Capital. You see, Gabrielle was an acolyte of Stephen Cohen, who runs Point72 Investment, which, side tangent. How does Stephen Cohen run Point72? I swear, if my memory serves me correct, did he not get actually convicted, proven for doing insider trading? I don't know if he served jail or just got the little white-collar fine type thing, but either way, I'm pretty sure they take away the keys on your ability to run an investment management company. How is he doing Point72? I don't know, I'll look it up later, but whatever. Anyway, so Stephen Cohen was the teacher and mentor of this Gabrielle Plotkin guy, and he did very well for himself. Melvin Capital got up to, I want to say, like 14, 15 bill or something in assets under management, which is a freaking insane amount. Like, my God, he was really killing it. And then he lost 55% of the fund in a single month on GME. My God, what a bag holder. Oh my God. Seriously, he had to shutter the fund. That was the biggest institution to take an L on GameStop and actually shutter. Like, I'm sure market makers and stuff lost a bill or two. I'm pretty sure Citadel did. But overall, though, no one took a bigger L than Gabrielle. My God. But that's just the biggest on the institutional side. What about retail? Well, Keith Gill, / Roaring Kitty, / DFV, / Deep Fucking Value. This guy, one of our two main characters, he was sitting pretty, because, yeah, I mean, he did lose $15 million in a day, but you gotta remember, his cost basis was so low, and he wasn't some super rich guy. I think he day traded at home after quitting Wall Street or something like that. He had like $1 million or $2 million, but after this, he had like generational wealth. I remember on his final post, he had like, I want to say like 35 mil worth of stuff left over, 200K shares. This is pre-split, so post-split, there'd be 800K shares. But overall, though, like he really got out like a bandit. He did diamond-hand it to the end, only he didn't. Everyone seems to misremember this, but he actually sold. Like, if you look at his numbers and stuff, he did, I think, sell half or something like that midway through this whole saga. Which, I mean, good for him. He shouldn't be beholden to taking L's just because, apes strong together. That's a stupid philosophy for investment, okay? You don't invest in terms of finding a community. That's not what a community is for, okay? Find a community in real life with real people. Don't try to find a community through an investment group where we all buy the same stock. Jesus, this is your future. But anyway, so he, at the end, he still had 200K shares on the final post as of April of 21 or something like that. So he was still sitting pretty with like 30-some mil in the bank, or at least not in the bank, but in stock. Who knows what happened after that? He did reappear, though. We'll get to that. But I want to go back. I want to go back to his bull thesis. I got it written down here. His GME bull thesis, the 3 overs. Over 1. Digital risks overblown. The PS5 Pro has no disk drive. No new console will have a disk drive. Anyway, transition to physical or digital is slower than many are pricing in. Physical discs remain a good chunk of the market in 2020. Maybe. In-game purchases may be skewing commonly shared figures. Well, in-game purchases is where a lot of the value is going, and again, that's all digital. GameStop's not involved. That seems important. But why discs? Preference, console storage, trade value, download speed, sharing. Well, let's go through that. Preference. Clearly not, okay? Look, I was a very early adopter on the digital only. Despite having my fire marionette speed of barely better than dial-up, I was using Steam with PC gaming, right? There was no discs, and honestly, I would hate discs. I was very happy just to have all my games. I could download them when I want, delete them when I want. They're all there. Yes, there's issues with ownership, but at the end of the day, convenience trumps all. That's why pirating died, right? At least for a bit. It's because when Netflix was at one point the only arbiter of media on the internet, you pay $10 a month. Screw it, I just got my entertainment. I mean, it's still like that with music, right? Like, you get Apple Music or Spotify. Either way, you have all music ever for $10 a month. It killed pirating overnight because it's just convenience trumps free. It just does, as long as it's priced well. You're seeing this unwind with the streaming bundle these days, as now there's 5 different subscriptions. You got your Disney Plus, Peacock, whatever Paramount tried to do, my God. All these companies, so you're seeing pirating rise again. But in terms of actual convenience and preference, people prefer the convenience, and people are going to prefer no disc. Console storage. If you get a disc these days, did you know that, like, okay, I buy a new Call of Duty, right? It's only like 30 gigs on that disc. And then when you pop it in, it's like, all right, downloading day one patch or something, 400 gigs. So basically, that's not a thing anymore. Trade value. What trade value? You run GameStop. I know what your trade-in value is. Don't you fucking try to gaslight me. I'm not... Sorry. Anyway. Download speed. Again, even my farm internet that was like only 10x dial-up, I was fine with that. Nowadays, yeah, games are bigger. Now I got 3 gigabit internet, okay? I could get 8 if I wanted. I don't know why I'd need that, but I could. And then sharing. Anyway, so first over, it's over. Second over, negative sentiment overdone. Negative commentary abounds. Haven't shopped there in years. You can already download everything. Digital is the future. GameStop is the next blockbuster. The terminal value is 0. That's a fair point. It's not 0. We'll get to that. Poor managerial decisions have made the company obsolete. Brick and mortar is dead. Amazon, period. There's just a line that just says Amazon. Fewer people will shop at GameStop because of the pandemic. Every single one of these is true. It's like he just listed all of the very important, relevant parts about why GameStop is screwed, minus the whole terminal value 0 thing. GameStop bears seem to falsely impute behaviors to others. Do not seem to be security analysts. All right, seem to falsely impute behaviors to others. I think that's you, okay? That's projection. Because I'll tell you what, every single complaint you had here is relevant and proven to be correct these days. My God. So far, okay, 2 overs are over, okay? Also, do not seem to be security analysts. Buddy, do you see the side you're on? So 2 overs, over, okay, terrible. At least, okay, value is overlooked. That's the final over. Please tell me this is good. New board of directors, seemingly more competent. New management team, seemingly more competent. Yeah. Cutting costs. COGS, de-densifying stores, working capital management. Yeah, I mean, you've been cutting costs, I guess. Better capital allocation. Asset sales. Actively testing stores. No acquisition. Improved flexibility via refinancing. Jesus, man. What does this even mean? Oh, extended maturities, rid of covenants, adequate liquidity through console refresh and potential turnaround. Console refresh. He was banking on the console refresh. This was the PS5/Xbox One X dumbass fucking branding they do. This was that generation. This did not turn around GameStop. None of this is true. GameStop remains highly relevant. $68, I assume, million in revenue. $18 during 2020. I don't... Anyway, significant operating leverage, trades at 4% of end console cycle revenues. How is that a relevant metric? What is that actually a metric? Historically successful at generating free FF. I'm assuming that's free cash flow. He means FCF, despite bloated costs. $260 million market cap is less than the fair net asset value of $400 million. Again, this one might actually be right. This is the second one where I'm like, okay. Plus conservative estimate of future free cash flow is 100 mil. Increasingly compelling chart. What does this even mean? Discounted upside potential. Extended interest in physical games as compared to music/movies. Yeah, that sure played out. Higher margin revenue streams via vendor partnerships. did not materialize. Evolution into the social and cultural gaming hub definitely did not happen. Overall, this was the biggest piece of dog shit fucking 3-over thesis I've ever seen. This is just terrible. 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 What was he thinking? Oh my God. And yet, this was the thesis that propelled him to the top. This was the thesis he did to make him invest. That is what he did. This was his magnum opus. This is what people were investing on. Think about that. That's what caused people to invest and trust him. They deserved what they got.
Before the news had hit the market, WallStreetBets came up and bought it. With diamond hands, they knew they'd profit if they could only hold.
Now, by this point, we were a few months past the peak of the mother of all short squeezes. The squeeze was squoze, or so everyone thought, except for the apes who thought otherwise. They were convinced the mother of all short squeeze was any day now, TM. But everyone was tired of their shit because, again, there was nothing new to say. You see, all of this attention had attracted a lot of people who aren't investors. And you see, WallStreetBets was the mecca for this place. It's where Deep Fucking Valley or DFV was posting Roaring Kitty. That's where he was going with his updates of, yo, I'm still holding, here's my positions, look at me go, I'm still strong, diamond handing. And so this is where everyone kind of congregated. And honestly, this is the curse of online internet communities overall. They're going to go to shit as they get bigger. You see, ideally, you want a community that's like 1,000 if you're doing some real niche shit, or 10,000 if you're doing some stuff where you'd like some beginner help but still want to have the experts on hand. 100,000 is genuinely the zenith when it comes to memes and other humor, like non-credible defense during the early Ukraine war period or just before. Damn, that was good. And honestly, they got some heaters still. But you see, once you reach a mil, that's the death of the community. Because at 100K, you have enough brains that there's going to be a few beautiful minds in there. And they're going to have the highest tier humor, the most highbrow, like, I can't describe it. If you know, you know. But just 100K is the peak humor. Peak usefulness is like 10K. But a mil, that's when it's just lost. Because now you just have any average Joe showing up and they're just shitting up the place, posting everything. And I don't want to sound like some old man, like back in my day. But like, seriously, WallStreetBets was a beautiful place. And then the apes invaded. And again, January was fine. It was dank. It was our meme. But by February, March, April, it was just a bunch of mindless idiots just posting the same memes, posting the same no-thought analysis. I just want to go back to the days where I had some unhinged schizo dude tell me how he's going to short this company, this biotech company, because he knows the daughter of some employee that's working there, and they say that their phase 3 trial is not going to work out or something. I want stuff like that. I want guys asking if you can short Boeing because the plane just crashed and the market doesn't know yet because no one knows, the news doesn't know. Is that insider trading? It's not, by the way. But just I want the good old days. I want stuff like that, okay? And so WallStreetBets, before the GME crisis, it was below a mil. Then it hit a mil. Then it hit 2 mil. Then it hit 3 mil, 4 mil, 5 mil, 6 mil, and it's just lost its soul. And so, you know what? We at least had some good moderators. They came together and they're like, okay, anyone talking about this GME shit, you're banned. Okay, if I see one more diamond and an ape emoji, I'm gonna shoot myself and you. Like, just like they went off, and they did clean it up. But I will say it's never returned to its former glory. It's now the 49th, 50th biggest subreddit of all of Reddit. It's 17 mil users or something. Like, it's anytime it gets above a mil, it's over. It's the tragedy of the internet. But anyway, okay, I'm not gonna soliloquy about this. The point being is that there was a schism, and so all of these apes were forced to flee to some other subreddits. You see, they had their own, like GME, or like SuperStonk is the big one. There was also some anti-subreddits, though. You see, these anti-subreddits, like GME_meltdown or something like that, they were tracking the very real fact that this was all going to go to shit. GME was not going to be the mother of all short squeezes, all these idiots were saying. And so they were just there eating popcorn as more of these guys popped up, realizing, oh God, I just ruined my retirement on some internet meme. Oh God. Stuff like that. And that's cruel. That's not something you should indulge in. That's a negative influence on your life. It will make you a worse person. but it's still fun to, indulge every once in a while, like some chocolate or something late at night. But the point being is that they got all kicked out, and so they got into their own echo chamber where it was just them. And boy, did they start cooking. Okay? So the big thing they realized is that when you have shares in something like Fidelity or Robinhood or whatever, it's probably in a margin account, and it's going to be available to be lent. And see, they were really concerned about the possibility of their shares being able to be borrowed by short sellers to be sold, because they were concerned about synthetic shares because of the naked short selling they thought was happening. But also, they just didn't want to help shorts out by giving them more liquidity for their shorts, which, again, that's actually smart. There are ways to do that without doing what they did, but what they did do was something that would honestly really inconvenience them. They direct registered their shares. I think it's like CompuServe or some compu thing. I'll put it up. But there's a company, and this is where you directly register your shares with them. And so that means that it's not able to be easily traded. But it also means those shares are just under your name. They're there, they're real. And so assuming their conspiracy of the naked shorts is real, they were really concerned that they had synthetic shares in their portfolio. But now you can't really easily sell. So if there's some big price action, you're just kind of screwed. But they did get a lot of shares directly registered. I think it's 25% of the float, 25% of all GME shares are currently directly registered. Ryan Cohen, remember, he owns like 13, 20%, something like that, of GameStop. And so his entire net worth is basically tied up in this thing. He's really incentivized to keep the stock high, but he's also really incentivized to do other things that we'll get to. Now, you see, he sees all these apes posting, memeing, upvoting each other, and he's like, hey, I could just continue to meme stock this, and I could help prop the price up and just keep enthusiasm going, and we could probably leverage them too. So he starts posting vague memes, and they start doing what I remember QAnon doing. Now, I don't know if you remember QAnon, but I was there in the origin, back when it was on 4chan. You see, QAnon started with this one dude. He would just post, he's like, I have Q-level security clearance with the Department of Energy, which is a real thing. He's not real, though, because he would start schizo posting saying, oh, there's going to be this and that, there's going to be an overthrow of the US government, and people would start reading into his posts on 4chan, and they'd be like, oh, well, numerology of his posts, there's X amount of characters, numerology says that he means this, and that's the hidden message. And, oh, now he's posting, if you look at all the capital letters, they combine to be this acronym, and I'm going to take out this word from it, and boom, this is the secret. And that's really how QAnon got started, and you can see where it ended. But overall, though, it's just kind of similar, if you think about it, to those people that are schizophrenic, and they watch a TV show, and they're like, they're showing hidden messages to me. The government's in my walls. The bugs are back.
The bugs are back.
This is them. It's QAnon for finance. It's QFinon. This is what they become, because once they got ousted from WallStreetBets, there was no sane people left to disabuse them of their notions, or at least try to push back. And so overall, these guys just started going crazier and crazier in their own echo chamber, and now they're at the point where they're convinced that somehow, for the last few years, all these short sellers have somehow just been continuing to roll over their shorts, continuing to keep them on. Do you understand what carrying costs would be involved? Look, I'm going to get to their teardown of their arguments eventually, but for now, I just really want to highlight the fact that this was a terrible, terrible move in terms of the health of the investors, the apes themselves. It was beautiful for WallStreetBets. It really cleaned up the subreddit. But for these actual ape investors, this was the worst thing you could have done to them, because now they're just alone with their thoughts and they're all just feeding off of each other. It's insanity.
No deals were cut, no shorts were squeezed. The captain's mind was not on greed, but he belonged to the artist's creed. He took the risk to hold.
All right, now I'm going to go over every single one of the points that all of these QFinon people have, and I'm just going to completely destroy them, because this needs to be done. And unlike most conspiracies, these people seem to have fact and logicked their way into this rabbit hole. So I'm really hoping and praying that I can fact and logic them out while there's still money to get. Because as it stands, there's like 5 main points I really want to bring up here. The first is the whole issue with the shorts never closed, okay? You see, this isn't a conspiracy of the shorters, it's a conspiracy if you're right, of the market makers and brokers that are allowing these shorts to continue to hold. Do you know what the carrying cost is for a 3+ year short? Phenomenally large. Like, Jesus, this is so big. There is no friend in finance. It's weird. You seem to get this concept because you understand that it's cutthroat and stuff, and the big financial firms are on your side, because they're not. They're on their side, yes. But there's no camaraderie. There's no friends in the trench. None of this. No, it's cold calculated. Where's my money? There is nothing out there, okay? You know, Melvin, there was companies like Point72 or something like that. Any one of these firms, there is people who could have helped save Melvin. No one did, because Melvin went under. And it's finance. It's what happens. Man, sucks to suck. That's it. And look, at the end of the day, when you're a big financial broker or market maker, there's just too many people involved in all this, okay? You know how many people tell me about their companies and how they're doing before earnings come out? Or, you know, I'd be working on a deal, I'm like, oh, hey, I'm working on this type of deal. Like, honestly, I don't think you understand just how loose lips are. It's humanity. It's just human nature. My friend works at XYZ large tech company. I work at XYZ large tech buyer or something. You know, we're just talking, and we'll just totally dox exactly what we're doing. But the issue is none of us trade on it. That's the thing, because you're never going to get away with it. Maybe you could. I don't want to know that, though, because it's just not worth it, okay? Be a good investor. That's the key. Like, the amount of times I could have bought options on large companies who had dramatic earnings swings that I was aware of beforehand, like dozens. You just don't trade on shit like that. You don't. But people talk regardless. And if there was a conspiracy to help out these shorts by allowing them to keep rolling it over like that, people would know. This is not something that would stay secret. It's not something that can stay secret, because the number of people that numerically would be involved in this is just so goddamn high. This is my issue with so many conspiracies. You really, like, the only secret you can have is between you and one other person. And that one other person could be the only person. Even if there's 2 people, it's probably over. 3, it's definitely over. Like, you can't keep secrets. People are gossip bags. So if there was some whole shorts never covered, it would, 1, be a conspiracy of the market makers and brokers, not the shorters themselves. And 2, there's way too many people involved. This would get out. It's been 3+ years. It's not got out. It's not real. There is no such amount of money that would prevent some drunk idiot in a bar from bragging to a girl or something and someone overhears. Like, it's over, okay? And especially under the Biden administration, you think they'd put up with this shit? Fuck no, okay? And people talk in the most dumb ways, okay? If you're gonna say something illegal, do it over Signal. None of them do, though, because people are idiots, okay? OPSEC doesn't exist. So this would have gotten out, and Biden would be the exact administration to punish this, and yet none of it has, because it never happened, okay? Naked short selling did not happen in this case. But okay, let's move on to the next thing. This is, in my opinion, the most irrefutably damning, because it's just public knowledge. Look how much the volume was. I know I talked about the price earlier. Look at the volume of shares sold. The peak in one day was 200 million shares. 200 million. Do you know what that means? 200 million? Do you know how many shares were outstanding back then? There was 70 million. Do you know how many shares were float? 50 million. Do you know how many shares were shorted? 70 million. Do you know what this means? I think it was January 22nd, that might have been peak volume. But regardless, the shorts covered sometime between January 15th and 30th. There's nothing else to say. When you trade 200+ million shares in a day, that's like 3 times over the short interest ratio. They're going to cover, and they had to cover because they were compelled to cover. Like I said earlier, that system I described is what happened. The short squeeze ran up. It did. And you saw them cover under all that volume. When there's that much volume, they can't not cover, because why wouldn't you cover? You take the L, live to fight another day, versus not taking the L and then going bankrupt, going under, and losing your reputation. No one does that. You guys just don't understand this market, okay? But fuck it. All right, let's go on to the next thing. Ryan Cohen, the evil man. Okay, I think Ryan Cohen should be in jail. Here's why. 1, the stock dividend. Okay, remember earlier how I said that stock dividends? Oh well, dividends that happen while you are shorting a share, you owe them to the short provider. Okay, the market maker or broker that lent you those shares. You do, yes. And so Ryan Cohen, knowing what the apes were thinking, issued a stock dividend instead of doing a normal stock split. And he did that under the knowledge that all of the financially illiterate apes would think, oh my God, hedgies are screwed now. They're going to have to buy 3 shares. Whoa. That's not how that works, guys. That's not how that fucking works. You could have Googled it. Shorts do not work in that way. If there's a 4-to-1 stock split, doesn't matter if it's a dividend or not. The issue, I blame Investopedia, if I'm being honest, because I look at their site and it makes it sound like a share dividend means anything. A share dividend is a non-dividend. Honestly, if a company gives a share dividend, you should sell, because that's just a dumbass move. The only reason you should ever do any sort of stock split is just because you're like, oh God, my stock is like $1,000 per share. This really makes it hard to invest unless you got like $1,000 per share worth of like portfolio. Like it basically reduces the amount of buyers that could buy your stock, because buying $1,000 per share is a significant chunk. Sure, yeah, makes sense. Although we have fractional share investing too now through Robinhood and companies like that, right? And I know Robinhood restricted the ability to buy and would only allow you to sell during the peak of GME. That wasn't because of any conspiracy either. You can Google this. But they did that because they had a margin call themselves almost. I forget the specifics. I'll put it up on the screen. You see, this is too big to post on screen, so I had to print this shit and then read in front of a robin. I'm going to call this a robin. I don't know what bird it is. My grandmother's shaking her head in sorrow right now. I got this article off of Mergers and Inquisitions, which I think succinctly summarizes everything you need to know. So, you see, Ken Griffin didn't just call Janet Yellen and ask her to order Robinhood to shut down speculative buying, okay? That's not what happened. That's not what happens. Well, it's a nice conspiracy, but what did happen is the issue of T+. You see, when traders go and buy and sell securities, you got to post some clearance. Because what happens is they don't sell right away. In U.S. markets, it takes 2 days, so T+2. And which means that Robinhood's taking some credit risk while they wait to pay or receive cash. You see, the National Security Clearing Corp, or NSCC, handles the exchange of cash for securities and vice versa, while the DTCC, which you hear featured in a lot of conspiracies, also known as Seed & Co., they'll sometimes refer to them as, these are the enemy that they're saying you should direct register your shares to avoid. They set the rules for what happens to brokerages in this regard. And so basically, to reduce credit risk, if brokerage firms like Robinhood, for example, couldn't actually post the cash they need to acquire the securities that their users are buying, or vice versa, you need to put up collateral. You know, you need to produce cash, so you need to produce a clearing deposit to ascertain whether or not you'll have the capital to buy what you say your users are going to buy. It's simple, right? It's just a risk mitigation strategy so that the markets are more liquid, because you can trust more so that there won't be a failure to deliver. But the issue is that in normal times, while this works fine, when trading volumes spike, and especially when you're a fintech company and you're not one of the old money, big balance sheet elites like RBC, BMO, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, all these guys, all of them have actual balance sheets to go off of. So there's no question of if they're going to post, okay? But Robinhood and all these other fintech fuckheads, they have very strained finances because they're always optimized. You know, I almost got a loan for Terra Luna or something like that. They had this weird algorithmically stable crypto coin, and I almost got a loan for $1 million US, and I was going to convert it to USD, and it was denominated in that weird coin that was algorithmically stable at $1 per coin. And then it crashed a week before I got that loan. That's the issue with all these fintech companies. They're always optimized, hyper-optimized, because it gets them their margin. That's why they can charge way less fees. It's optimizing for the margin at the expense of the black swan. And sometimes the black swan happens, like with GME. Because you see, when people all go and rush to buy at the same time, now there's got to be a lot of money posted, because DTC, they all require that if you're going to buy a bunch of shit, it's T+2 in the US to buy anything, so you must post some sort of clearing margin or clearing collateral to make sure that you're going to actually come through, because they want to avoid failure to delivers. And so what happens when there's a rush to buy? Well, you better be well capitalized, which Robinhood was not, because, as I said, buying activity affects the clearing deposit calculation differently from selling activity, which is why Robinhood only
only disabled buys and not sells. You see, Robinhood doesn't have to post collateral to sell because they're selling. So someone's buying from them. So they're the one who has to post the collateral. You see, Robinhood, their balance sheet, it's not that big because, again, they're fintech. They ran lean so that they can charge low fees. And so because of that, when you have everyone rush to the buy, now you got to post a shit ton of collateral that Robinhood does not have as cash on hand. And so Robinhood is either going to have to raise money, which they did do during this crisis. You saw them have to go out to market and raise a bunch of money. That wasn't a bailout. It was just, hey, we need some money so we can actually front this, so we can buy all these shares our users are demanding. And they didn't disable the buy button. That was some conspiracy. It did not help Robinhood. It harmed Robinhood, especially reputationally. Like, think about it. To this day, people shit on Robinhood. They avoid them. They go to other no-fee trading platforms as if they're any different. No, the only thing Robinhood did wrong was not explain fully to their users exactly what the fuck was going on and why they had to do what they did. Just keeping everyone in the dark is always the wrong move. You should always just give radical transparency in these sort of PR relationship issues, because at least when the situation is truly understandable and you're not trying to fuck people, any logical, rational actor will get it. And even though these apes are clearly not rational in their actions investment-wise, at least they can empathize. Because at the end of the day, it's clear DTCC, who made these rules up, is the one fucking them. The same DTCC and Seed and Code that everyone hates as an ape. That's such a good enemy to have. You could have framed it as, oh no, it's not us, it's the DTCC blocking the buy button on our behalf. We would love to let you buy more, but the evil DTCC is doing this. They would have ate that shit up. Robinhood, I forget what the fuck the name of the guy is who ran it, but Jesus Christ, you had such a good opportunity. You fumbled the bag. I don't know who your PR was, but you should have fired them, fired HR, fired everyone involved. Seriously, you fumbled this so hard. You could have been such a hero in this. But that is why they disabled the buy button. Robinhood is blameless. They did not do this based on anything else besides just DTCC saying, you can't buy more because you got no collateral, you got no money. Robinhood is guiltless in this regard, but they're not in terms of the actual way they do make money off you. Anyway. And so they had to do that to remain solvent, but it's all okay. But also you shouldn't use Robinhood because they front run you, and that's why there's no fees. Any no-free stock trader, what they do to earn their fee is they sell your market data to companies which will basically kind of like quant trade you like a fraction of a second before you do the trade, and then arbitrage a bit of a difference. So you pay a higher price than the market otherwise would require, and so you're implicitly paying the fee that way. Fun fact. So basically, if you got more than like 10 or 20K, don't go through a zero fee stockbroker. Go through like IB, whatever the four-letter word is. Anyway, sorry, tangent. Going back to the actual short squeeze, the volume, that is alone irrefutable evidence. It's over. The short squeeze happens. They could cover. The sheer volume of shares being traded back then, they would have covered. It's just, there's no way they wouldn't have. But Ryan, you see, he knows all these apes are doing all the QFinon shit, so he's like, oh, okay, first I'm gonna do the stock dividend, yeah. And remember, that's not how shorts work. They don't owe shares through that stock dividend that way. The share contract basically updates to say, okay, I know you borrowed 1 share, but really it's 4 shares now. So yeah, you just owe me 4 shares back. That's how it works. But that does help, though, in one way for the short sellers. If they were still holding, it would help them because now, because there's a lot more liquidity, there's a lot more people that can buy in, which is the idea behind a share split, which means there's more volume to trade. And again, the volume of trading is what matters, because if there's a lot of shares exchanging hands, that's a way easier environment to cover in. And so if they were getting dicked, they would cover then. But the real heel in the coffin, the real way that Ryan is screwed over every ape is through all of his share issuances. You see, this fucker, he goes out and he's like, I got a bunch of idiots that are just totally ride or die for me. I'm gonna start issuing new equity. And this could be no bigger pro-short seller covering move than any move you could do. Seriously. First it started with like, oh, I'm gonna issue like, what, 20 or 40 million new shares. And like he did like 75 of the biggest in one. Then he did like, even like a week or two ago, he announced a new 20 million share round. And every time that happens, he just sells them on the open market, which one, kills all current equity owners, because now all those new shares are flooding, and so there's no oversupply, and so the demand needs to rise to accommodate them, which means that the share price must drop. And it does help GameStop because now it adds cash directly to their balance sheet. But on the other hand, though,
it also helps shorts cover, because when you're issuing new stock, they would be the first to lap that up, right? Would they not? Like, seriously, honestly, Ryan's moves since taking over, at least since the end of 2021, you can only describe it as pro-short covering. There is no other way to describe it. He just keeps doing things that would only help short sellers that got caught with their pants down cover if they hypothetically were still holding, which they're not, because that would be stupid. There is no market maker or broker that would ever do that. They're incentivized to do the opposite. Like, seriously, none of this makes any goddamn sense, and I'm tired of hearing it. But I think the biggest of all, the biggest reason you should never, ever believe any of this ape bullshit, and you should really fucking sell if you can, is this. If you were right, okay? If you did that, hit that 600K a share, or if you bankrupted Wall Street, killed the hedgies, whatever. Any of these things came true, there is one simple fact of what would happen, okay? Everyone in society, if you hit the goals you think you will, we would all owe you all of our investments and money and shit. And yet we don't. We would just say, this is just a glitch in the system. You know what? Do I want to hand my retirement to all these random ass fucking guys in their basements? You know, what is there, like 10,000, 100,000 of you? You think everyone in society is going to be like, yeah, okay, no, these are the new tycoons. These guys are just the new ruling class. All of us got screwed because, darn, you know? You think that's going to happen? You think everyone's going to hand over the retirement to you? You think you're going to become rich and everyone else become poor? No, what's going to happen is the 99.9% of society that is not part of you, we're all going to say, fuck that, roll it back, and it will. Congress will pass a bill, they'll roll it back. Seriously, the idea of your plan ever working makes no sense because no voter would ever want it. Everyone would say, roll it the fuck back. Oh my God, my retirement, my life savings, Jesus Christ, I'm gonna kill myself for you or everyone. Like, seriously, this is what would happen. It would be a collapse of society if you got what you hypothetically think you will get. Genuinely, there is no system that would ever allow that to happen. If it did come to fruition, if everything went off without a hitch the way you thought, Congress would just roll it back and say, no, that's just a glitch in the financial system. I mean, it's not. Like, everything did happen the way it should, if you're right. But it's like, we're just going to not count it, is the thing. If you genuinely were right, we would just not count it, roll it back a day. Because to do otherwise would be to collapse society. Everyone would be broke. You would be the new moguls of life. But there's only like 10,000 or 100,000 of you versus the rest of the nation. No one would want that. Every voter would be screaming, fuck them. And so you'd get fucked. That's what would happen. In this world where you were absolutely right, they would roll it back. There is never a single dimension in the multiverse that would ever play out with you actually getting to keep any spoils of this hypothetical mother of all stock splits you think is coming, because no voter would want it. And every congressperson that's beholden to their voters would be like, not just, oh shit, I'm also one of the ones screwed, but they'd also be like, oh my God, I'm gonna get voted out if I don't roll this back. There is not a single person that would stand up for you because you're a minority of a minority, and there would be no justification beyond, oh, they invested in GameStop, so we owe the economy to them. No, it's just, none of this makes any sense, guys. Like, Jesus, did none of you think for a single second? Doesn't matter though, because it's not too late. At any time, you could still sell. Bonus points. All right, so that whole short thing, I'm embarrassed to forget to say it the first time, but hear me out now. All right, so you got all these shares. How is it 140% the float short? That means that every stock is shorted 1.4 times. It's simple, okay? What happens is, let's say I own 100 shares. I am the 100% owner of a public company. I don't know why it's public, but fuck it. All right, I own 100% of the shares. And this dude's like, hey, I want to short like 10% of that stock. And I'm like, okay. So I lend it to him, and then he shorts it. And let's say I buy that back, right? And then he keeps doing that. And then after 10 days, on day 11, he's like, hey, I keep wanting to short again 10% as I've been doing per day. And so you're like, okay, I've literally lent you every share I have to short, but I have all my shares still because I keep buying them back. Okay,
Here you go. And so you lend him shares that have already been shorted. So now he's shorting shares that have been shorted. That's normal, okay? It's called a leverage position. You see, when you own 100% of the stock, you're long unlevered. But then when you lend them out to be shorted and then buy them back, now you're adding leverage. So now your returns are 2x. Because if you have 100% of the shares, you lend out 100% of the shares to be shorted, then you keep buying them back, that means that you are 2x leverage long. And now they're short, but now they're trying to go beyond 100% short. That's fine. It's fine for you to say, fuck it, let's short some more too. So that's totally normal. In the same way that it's normal for you to go to the hairdresser and be like, hey, I need a haircut. Here's $20. And they're like, okay. And then they go to the farmer and they're like, hey, I want a chicken. Here's $20. And they're like, okay. And then they get that chicken. And then the farmer takes the $20 and they're like, hey, I need my car fixed. And you're the mechanic. And so he gives you your $20 bill back. What? But it's the same $20 bill this whole time. This can't make sense. That's literally you right now. It's called velocity of money. Look it up. This is the exact way how shorts are able to short more than the overall float, more than the overall shares outstanding. It makes total sense. It's called velocity of money when it comes to money. And when it comes to shares and shorts, it's totally the same concept. You can make the same argument. It makes total sense. And it's stupid for you not to realize this. You could own all the shares. The shares could be 100% shorted and you could continue to leverage them out. You just are multiplying your leverage on the position. You could keep lending them out and it is okay. It makes total sense within our financial system. And it's weird for you to think it shouldn't. I mean, logically, at the very first step, before you read anything into the topic, yeah, sure, it on the surface doesn't make sense. But when you know anything about monetary theory or economics in general, that's when it should start to click into place. And yet none of you do, because none of you have thought a single second about this before you decide to buy a fucking stock that you read on Reddit was a good buy because apes strong together, diamond handing. That's your financial logic. Bonus point over. It took me a month to edit that first fucking part. I literally missed fall. Where did my green go? It's just gone now. There's not even leaves on the trees. Holy fucking shit. I need a better computer. Like and subscribe so I can get an RTX 6090, please.
As far as I've heard, the fight's still on, the short's not squeezed, and the game's not won. The Tenny Man makes his regular call to encourage the captain, crew, and all.
In the intervening years, since the short squeeze of 2021, GameStop stock has been on an unmitigated downward spiral. On a split-adjusted basis, it was peaking at $120 a share, and just in 3 1/3 short years, it fell over 90% to less than $10 a share by April of 2024. Reasons abound for what you describe this to, whether it's the general dilution or anti-ape practices of Ryan Cohen, or whether it's the fact that GameStop was, is, and will continue to be the Sears of our time, a floundering company that's probably going to go under sometime in a decade or two. Honestly, I really want to highlight how Ryan Cohen has not taken a single goddamn question during his earnings calls. Just take that in. Imagine doing that as a public company that's got this much market cap. Imagine doing it as a public company in general. That's the point of being public. You take some fucking questions during your goddamn earnings calls so that investors can know what's going on. And when he is cornered on shit like, what are you going to do with that $5 billion war chest you've extracted from investors? All he can muster is, I'm going to use it to invest in other companies' stocks. Truly the king of capital allocation. My God. Like, Jesus Christ, if there ever was a way to do a cuck form of finance, this would be it. Guy thinks he's Warren Buffett. But anyway, in terms of why you'd think this happens, the apes themselves, a lot of them would ascribe it to the fact that their savior, Roaring Kitty, abandoned them in their time of need. You see, they worshipped him as Jesus of QFinon. And he was crucified before Congress in 2021, before going into hiding, just like Jesus. He went away. And then in 3 later, just like Jesus, he returned. 3 years, though, not 3 days. It's quite literally a retarded second coming. But anyway, so he came back on his second coming, retired version, with this banger of a tweet on May 12th in the year of our Lord 2024. This sent the stock price over 100% higher in the single day it tweeted. What am I doing with my life? Speculation ran rampant on whether or not someone bought his account or maybe he was hacked, but regardless, less than a month later, his Reddit account, Deep Fucking Value, also showed back up, this time with another portfolio update. Let me remind you that when he last left in April of 2021, he had on a split-adjusted basis 800,000 shares worth $31.5 million, an additional $3.5 million in cash. When he returned on June 2nd, 2024, he showed up with 5 million shares and an additional 12 million shares callable through call options. Take that in, all right? But if there is one thing that we can show, it's that he showed up with $116 million in shares, an additional $66 million worth of options, and an additional $30 million worth of cash, which raises 2 points. All this together raises 2 points. One, it confirms irrefutably, without a doubt, that DFE is a paper-handed bitch, because his cost basis that he showed in that screenshot shows that he only bought within the last 2 weeks before posting, which means that he sold all of his original shares. Because even if he held on to a bit of them, that cost basis wouldn't be what it was, which means that he guaranteed sold all of his GameStop stock between 2021 and today. Probably pretty close to the beginning of that rather than the end, which means that he fucked over the apes. He is not one of you. But I think the second point, the more salient of the two, is that he went from $34.5 million worth of money in value. Mind you, 31 million of that was paper gains. It wasn't even locked in. He went from basically 34 million in paper gains all the way up to confirmed gains that he entered with in investable capital of over $200 million. Where the flying fuck did he get $200 million in 3 1/3 years? Well, again, speculation abounds. Some saying he's the LeBron James of finance, which, boys, let me remind you, this is Mr. Three Overs we're talking about. Fucking doubtful. But, others were saying, oh, he's got, like, some financial backer or whatever, but maybe, again, a whale bought or hacked his social media once more. That was rehashed too. But in my mind, the most compelling theory is that he did some securities fraud. Legally, though. Let me explain. Through this chart, here's a chart, okay? This chart on GME call option data, I ripped from Bloomberg since I can't afford a terminal anymore because a terminal costs like a 1-bedroom apartment in Toronto. It's quite literally over 20 grand a year. I'm hurting bad. Let's zoom in. Let's zoom in on the rightmost segment, though, of this chart. Again, yes, I'm resorting to pixel peeping a fucking JPEG for some due diligence here, okay? I know this is fugazi. Look where I live, okay? Look, this is where I live. Do you think I can afford a Bloomberg terminal? Like and subscribe so I can afford a fucking Bloomberg terminal again and have some real goddamn data. Please. Anyway. Going back to the pixel peeping, you'll see that by the start of April, we were at some of the lowest volume in open call options since the start of this whole short squeeze epidemic. By the end of April, it actually hit the low of less than 250K in open call options for volume since the start of this, before then suddenly spiking. By the way, this is right around the time where the stock dipped below $10 a share too. A lot of these numbers are very round in a human way, which is interesting. But its spike it did. By the end of the month, it almost doubled from its low of less than 250K. It carried that momentum forward into May, and by the time DFE tweeted his first tweet since 2021, we were at north of 600K. That is substantial. And by the way, when he first tweeted his tweet, that's when the price really started to spike, right? So, look, this might be some of the most scuffed DD in history, this side of the 3 overs, but in my mind, between whenever the hell 2021 and when he showed up in June with $205-6 million in total capital, I think what could have happened potentially is he woke up one day and remembered, oh shit, I'm one of 2 people on Earth, me and Elon Musk, who can actually just decide to move a stock price by a huge amount and not get jailed for it. And so with that knowledge, he saw it dip below $10. He's like, hey, this is as good a time as any. It's been on a downward trend for 3 years. Call options, especially out of the money ones, are super goddamn cheap. And if I know it's going to spike, that means that the information arbitrage gives me a shit ton of goddamn alpha. And so alpha he did. He mogged all over everyone else in the stock market. In my mind, my theory is that he loaded up on short-dated, out-of-the-money call options that were heavily discounted because, again, they're short-dated. The stock's been going down over 90%. And and continuing for over 3 years. No one is optimistic because, again, it's a dog shit company. And so he loaded up on these rock bottom prices. Then, 2 weeks later, he started tweeting. And then once he tweeted, he kept tweeting for that week. And he started offloading. And then he went silent for 2 weeks. And he showed back up in June with $200 and some million, 10x what he started with back in, April of 21, or ended with when we last saw him. And I think that's how he got it, pet theory, but he did all this knowing that he could make these heavily out of the money, short-dated call options become in the money, and he would buy them for pennies of pennies on the dollar and then flip them. And so Flippy did, in my mind. If I were him, if I were trying to make a conspiracy for this, that is what I'd choose. That is, to me, the most compelling theory. Now, you see, we are fairly certain on what happened next in that interim period between the week he tweeted during mid-May and the beginning of June when he showed up with a few $100 million worth of shares. You see, thank you, Bloomberg, for the data. They started with less than 20K in option volume for the specific contract that he was looking at, the June 21st $20 call options. Those were in the money at the time, which, again, it looks better. So they started with less than 20K in open volume for that specific date value contract. And then between May 20th and May 31st, the final 2 trading weeks of May, it suddenly spiked from less than 20K to a bit north of 140K, which directly matches up with what he actually showed up with. And also, if you average out the cost basis, it matches exactly what he had in his portfolio. So we know when he loaded up on those call options. Now, you see, they were in the money, right? So that's odd. That's not exactly the magic move that I described earlier. But you see, I think he did all this, in my opinion, he did all this to guarantee that the SEC would let him be. Because, think about it, right? He tweets a bunch of things completely unrelated to GameStop after loading up on a bunch of short-dated out-of-the-money call options. Then he sells them all right after spiking the shares through his, again, completely unrelated tweets. The tweet was literally a man in a chair leaning forward with the controller, showing that he's locking in, like, okay, it's game time, right? Again, you cannot link that directly to GameStop, but you damn well know that's what he was doing. But again, the law just cannot comprehend how to deal with this. But still, you don't want the SEC raising some eyebrows, right? Because you did, kind of dump after doing what you did. So to make sure that they got nothing on him, he undoes the dump in a way that doesn't really dump on him. You see, he loaded back up on in-the-money options, which could be expiring worthless, who knows? Or maybe they expire with a modest profit, modest loss, who knows? He's going to get rid of them. Because again, you don't diamond hand options that are short-dated. That's just an oxymoron. So he loads up on those, buys in a bunch of shares, and so, the price will go where it may, and where it did was in the low 20s throughout that period. It did spike briefly. We'll get to that second spike. But overall, though, even if it goes down back to the $10 it was at or near to, he's still way the hell up on all these trades overall cumulatively. So he dodges any SEC complaints. He doesn't even have to go to court because they really have nothing on him under our current legal structure. And then meanwhile, he still gets all those profits. So I think, in my opinion, if I had a theory for what he did, that's what he did. But then on June 7th or whatever, he goes on live stream on YouTube. People were frothing at the mouth for this. And he goes on to do the worst goddamn live stream I've ever seen in my godforsaken life. Like, seriously, the stock was sent cratering 40% by the end of the fucking stream. Over the course of the event, it cratered 40%. You could not have done anything worse to harm that company's stock than what he did. But, rather than me kind of going over this, let me see what Sherwood's got to say, because I read this article on them, and they were just comparing DFV 2020, the old 3-over DFV, to our current 2024 pump and dump DFV, right? So here's Keith Gill, August 2020, quotes to highlight and unpack his thinking on GameStop back during the 3-over arc. At a market value of 260 mil and an enterprise value of 100 mil, the downside's limited. Cogent. A reasonable fair net asset value of about 400 mil. Yeah. Over the next 18 months, GameStop could generate enough free cash flow to pay off its debt, exhaust its buyback authorization, and still have an adequate financial foundation to continue pursuing new revenue streams. I mean, maybe at the time. It trades so cheaply and is so heavily short that all that may be needed to revalue its stock is a shift in sentiment. True. I'm just a security analyst in search of asymmetrical upside. Based. It's highly unlikely GameStop's equity is worth less than $250 million. GameStop's legacy business is probably worth between $500 million and $1.5 billion. There's a non-zero chance that GameStop successfully reinvents itself. Correct. Right? Like, for all you rip on 3 over fucking period DFE, at least he had some points that were, cogent, if nothing else. But then we go to the pump and dump arc era Keith Gill of this period. If you remember my previous thoughts on the company and the opportunity, there was kind of like a 2-part thesis to it, and that second part of the thesis is a reinvention of the business model or a transformation, whatever you want to call it. Already a bit more wordy and kind of It becomes a bet on management. In particular, of course, Ryan fucking Cohen. I felt like I see enough where I believe this guy. I believe he might be able to do it. His only track record is Chewy, where his business strategy was just saying, I'm going to sell $1 for 70 cents, and then my competition will be so harmed by my strategy that they'll be forced to buy me out because I'll be cheaper than just waiting for me to go bankrupt, as I naturally will, selling $1 for 70 cents. That was his genius. Ryan seems like he has those characteristics in the way he approaches this. Seems like he might be able to do this. It's kind of based on feel. Let me remind you, old 3 over Keith. I'm just a security analyst in search of asymmetrical upside. God damn, what we have fallen so fucking far, and that was not far to fall you thought to begin with. The question marks will be, well, what has he done? What is he doing? What's the plan? Those are all fair questions, but do you really think he's been doing nothing? Yes! Yes, I do! I think we've seen enough from him to think he's got a good head on his shoulders, and we haven't seen anything, it's speculation. What? We don't know a plan. That's true, he literally has divulged nothing. Even the legacy business, cutting costs, trying to stabilize some cash flows, but now it's all about the transformation, and that cash pile is growing. I mean, sure, the cash pile is growing. I personally don't think 3 years is too long in this case. 5 years, 10 years, all right. In this case, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. I think with a significant amount of capital, I don't know. Let's see where this goes from here. Reminds me of the Dark Knight. You post a couple memes, a couple screenshots, and everyone loses their minds. Chill. He's literally being Joker here. He's being Joker here. We thought he wasn't crazy. That's your bad for thinking I'm all there. That's your bad for thinking I'm all there. Keith Gill, 2024. Like, just Jesus, man. How far we've fallen, and it did not feel like there was anywhere to fall. It was so over. Now it's like over to the power of 3. Jesus fucking Christ, how did we get here? After that abortion of a live stream, DFV posted his final portfolio position update to Reddit less than a week later on June 13th. He showed that he ended up paper-handing a little less than 8 million callable shares, but at least he did convert 4 million of them into actual shares, which means that he now had 9 million total shares in GameStop. This was worth around $250 million. He went dark, and then 11 days later, he posted with the SEC a Form 13D showing that he owned over 5% of Chewy. Ryan Cohen's pet food company comes up yet again. Then on the 27th, 3 days after that, he started shitposting just like he did with GME, showing Chewy. And unlike GME, it didn't, as far as I can see, do much to change the stock price. But we can glean a few things from this. Because you see, one, this confirms that he does make moves prior to tweeting about it. So he definitely does that. 2, maybe the point was that it wouldn't work. Because it did not work. He didn't lose money per se. It didn't materially change his net worth. So if you look at the SEC's case, this even further blocks him from action. Because now he's like, look, if that's true with the GME thing, why didn't it work with Chewy? Because I don't have that power. I didn't pump and dump. No, you can't blame me. Right? It just further weakens a hypothetical case. I don't know that. That seems pretty conspiratorial. But look, it's possible. But three. I think this means he paper-handed yet again, okay? Think about it. Unless this fucker has another $250 million lying under a goddamn couch cushion, I want to know where he gets his money. Because that conveniently is how much money he had in GameStop, okay? Think about it. You really think he had $500 million investable capital total? No, he sold his GameStop to buy Chewy, okay? And again, it didn't work. Doesn't matter, but if you do some quick math on his 2024 arc in total, he overall paper-handed 17 million shares, either directly or callable. And if you do the math on that, That's over, like, what is it, 6.7% of the float at the start, or after at the end when you account for all the dilution Ryan Cohen did during and throughout this, it was like 4.5% of the float. But either way, regardless, even just looking at the 12 million callable shares that he just paper-handed like that, you know, if there were hedgies still short, which so many of them still claim, Jesus Christ, guys, get over it. If the hedgies somehow still were short all these years later, they're doing a toast to Keith Gill that night, okay? Think about it. Those callable shares would have really created a spike. That would have MOASSed them to death for sure. For sure. But yet Keith did them such a solid there. He just didn't let it happen. You know, if they would have bought those calls when he sold them, boom, MOASS avoided. Thank you, Keith. Toast to you tonight.
Hey, the tiny man comes to send a rocket into the sun. One day when the trading is done, we'll take our game to you.
So you might have noticed that in 2024, there's been a lot of dilution. Like, it started, if you took what all of DFE had at the start, he had 6.7% of the float that he paper-handed that year in a month. But by the end of that month, he now had 4.5% of the float. That's a substantial fucking dilution in such a short time. Well, why did that happen? It's because Ryan Cohen learned his lesson from 2021. You see, he gets in there, but he's cucked, he's castrated, because he can't actually issue any new equity to capitalize on the fact that his stock is overvalued. Because what normally happens is you got to go to the board, you got to go to the SEC, you got to be like, okay, I want approval for new equity issuance, then you got to go get that approval, then you got to go pass some bylaws. It's a headache. It takes months. There's a lot of lead time. And the more you let the market think about the fact that you're diluting them, the more they're going to be like, I'm going to wait it out. Because why wouldn't you? Why would you want to get diluted? It's stupid. But Ryan learned his lesson, and so this year he got approval for essentially unlimited equity issuance for the foreseeable future at the drop of a hat whenever he wants. So anytime GME pumps, he will be there to capitalize because he is the one reaping the benefits of all this. And just in general, equity is a lot more expensive as capital than debt. You basically never want to take an equity. Like, look at private equity. I ran one. When you have one, you want to minimize the equity check, you want to maximize the debt, you want to lever to the tits, and you want to make sure you pay that back. Because debt doesn't mean you have to share any pie. You just got to pay it back. It doesn't matter if you got a credit card interest rate. If your cash flows suffice, you're good, and you should. But in terms of what Ryan's doing, he learned his lesson. Because actually, there is one reason why you should issue equity instead of debt. It's a very specific circumstance, but one GME is always in. You are, one, a public company, and two, you have a stock that is massively overvalued. That basically describes GameStop for the 2020s, because GameStop as a stock is not worth what it is worth. And so Ryan knows this, but he doesn't want to screw over things too much. So anytime there's a pop, though, he's going to be there to capitalize, because when you have it pop up, you just give off this little bit amount of equity. But in exchange, you get this mountain of cash. And then if the stock ever goes back down to reality, crashes into earth, you still get to keep all the cash. You don't got to repay shit. So that is the one time where it does make sense to get in equity instead of debt. And Ryan, he is in the know. That's all he does. That's all he's been doing. That's all he will do. He sees fools with money. He parts them from it. It's simple as. There is no hope for GME to truly spike or MOASS because he's just going to keep issuing new equity anytime it does. There is no hope for any ape. Ryan has learned his lesson. It's over. But if there is one conspiracy, if my whole thesis on DFV and where he got his money from is wrong, and he didn't do any legal securities fraud, sure. Then what if Ryan funded him? Because you see, if there's one person who has the most to gain from the stock bumping, it is Ryan Cohen, because he really wants to issue new equity so he gets to build up that cash, because it builds a floor, and that floor means you can't go below, because now you just have so much net asset value that it makes no sense for it to go below. Even if it's shorted to shit, if anything, that just means now you just buy it up and you're getting fucking $2 for every dollar you spend. It's a no-brainer. So overall, Ryan's building a giant cushion. Meanwhile, DFV showed up with a bunch of money. If he didn't get it through legal securities fraud, what if DFV was funded by Ryan Cohen? If that's the case, I think Ryan definitively is the most wrong in this scenario. But from a legal standpoint, if that's not, which I don't think it is, that means that DFV, in my mind, is definitely the villain in this story legally, because it's not illegal what he did, but he knew what he was doing. The SEC knows what he was doing. We all know what he was doing, but just the law is so behind what he's doing. He's on the bleeding edge of regulation. He's not going to get pinned for it, I don't think, but I do think it will be illegal shortly soon. But that being said, overall though, if there is a villain in all this, it is still Ryan Cohen. Because at least DFE is one guy, okay? He is one guy. He didn't have a ton of money way at the start of this. He's just a simple boy from Mass Mutual. But Ryan, what about Ryan? Okay? To what end? That's what I want to know, Ryan. To what end, right? Because you take all this money, you dilute the shit out of current equity holders, rob a bunch of people, part a bunch of idiots who, to be honest, we say, oh, they should know better, but really, should we truly expect them to know better? They just get an app on their phone, load up a bunch of their bank account, retirement savings, they get on some subreddits, and then they blow everything just because they believe in a dream that you've directly or indirectly sold them. But to what end is my issue, okay? The reason why I think you're the villain today is to what end have you done all this for? Because you've hoarded all this cash, you got this giant pile of cash, but to what end? What, just so you could sit on it like fucking Huel? Huh? Because I see what your cash is. You got 4.6 bill in the bank, but you taken in 5.2. You've literally lost 800 mil of that because GameStop, again, or 600 mil, because GameStop is a shit business. It's not doing good. You've just taken in all this money just to get a worse return than any other product on the market. You have quite literally turned 5.2 bill into 4.6 bill. If you took all of those inflows at the times they were and invested directly into the S&P 500, you'd have a 20% return versus your negative 11% return on equity. Seriously, instead of 4.6 bill, you'd have 6.2. A fucking T-bill would give a better return than what you've done. And you say you're a capital allocator. I'd call you the worst capital allocator of this decade, but I don't even know if I can call you a capital allocator because you haven't allocated shit. Seriously, it's fucking embarrassing. I'm not even out of my 20s, and you want to know what? I've allocated more capital than you have at GameStop this decade. Take that in, huh? How the fuck is that possible? It's because you suck at your job. Seriously, I want to know, what the flying fuck does Ryan Cohen do all day at work? Does he just jerk off in the bathroom? Seriously. And your memes are shit while I'm at it.
Soon may the Tenny Men come to send a rocket into the sun. One day when the trading is done, we'll take our gains and go.
So, look, this has been a long-ass video. Where does this all leave us, okay? So, I hope today I've explained to you that there's a lot wrong with GME. There's a lot wrong with investing. There's a lot wrong with QFinon. It's a cult. It's not a community. And you should never make financial decisions based on a community inclusion. Look, I know it's a lonely world out there. I know that it's hard. I know you're looking for these lottery tickets in life, but they're never coming. Look at the world around us. We're in a nadir, so to speak. We're going to get out of it, but just for now, it's dark. It's getting darker, and it's hard out there. It's cold. It's a cold world, and no matter what, I really hope that you understand that this is a mistake, because it's not too late to undo it. At any time, I know you might be down. Look, if you bought it like $300 or $400, like I've seen some users say, you're down bad, okay? Because even after the stock split, that's still like $75 to $100 a share, your cost basis. Currently, it's around the 20s. Yeah, you're down like 75%, but look, you could be down 100. Okay, 25% is still a hell of a lot more than nothing. It's infinitely more than nothing. And I know for some of you, your families, your friends, your wife, whatever, all these people have rejected you, they've shunned you, just like the QAnon people. The main issue they take with you is the fact that you don't seem like a logical, rational person anymore. They have the same aversion to you as people do to schizophrenics, because you're acting schizophrenically, and that creeps people out. They feel like they need to distance themselves from you. As much as culture these days might say otherwise, that's just a fact of life for schizophrenics and for you. Seriously, if you have a lot of people that are really, shunning you for the last while, if you go hat in hand to them and just explain, like, look, Jesus Christ, I was wrong. I feel very embarrassed. I was in a bad place. Don't even try to explain it. Just say, look, like, I get it now. I'm very embarrassed. I promise I've not had a psychotic break. I'm not going to be following that in the future. Look, I really hope, if nothing else, that we can just, forget about this. I do admit that I was fully wrong. You got to own this shit. But you also got to say, look, like, let's just Let's not hang this over my head for the rest of my life here. The best way forward is to move forward. Everyone wants that. They just want you to go back to the old you because they loved you at one point. That's why they were your friend. That's why they were your wife. That's why they were all these things. Because the alternative here, if you keep riding this out, there's really one thing that happens during financial ruin, okay? You know, in times like these, a lot of you, like earlier, might feel like you're on a ledge. And Jesus Christ, I just hope you know, it doesn't have to be that way, okay? You know, on that note of earlier, I just want to point out that even though it might feel like you're hanging off a ledge like me now, it doesn't have to be this way. Every moment in the moment, it feels like it's over. It's so over, but it's really never over. Seriously, the longer you live life, no matter how old you are, the more you realize it doesn't matter how far you've fallen, you can always come back. It doesn't matter if you've fucked up your retirement. It doesn't matter what you've done. It doesn't matter what familial ties you've ruined, whatever friendship groups you've forsaken. You can recover. In fact, you can even get them back. You can genuinely rebuild and repair those connections. No matter how much you're on that ledge, it does not matter. And I really think, in the spirit of the sea shanties we've been listening to today, I think there's a sea shanty you guys should hear because, you know, whenever I'm going through a dark time, if nothing else, I think this song really speaks to you all just as much as it speaks to me in my times of sadness. But because of YouTube copyright and the fact that I'm fucking living in an abandoned building, I got no money, so I'm going to sing it. I mean, it's a sea shanty. It's just voice, right? Also, Jesus Christ. Hanging off this fucking 5 stories. Oh. It took me a fucking month to edit all this. Holy fucking shit. I need a better computer. Like and subscribe so I can get an RTX 59.